Lab number 218. In this lab, we continue our development of our electricity consumption checker mobile application. And right now we will work on the logic, what will happen if we will click on specific task inside available tasks tab. And basically we will need to move these tasks to my task. So remove from list of available tasks, add to list of my tasks. And we will also work on badges, because you remember badge with a number of tasks available was a requirement when we were talking about application structure using the mockups. So we will work with the badges also. So let's start with a simple action. What will happen if we will click on our task? So instead of ref, we will implement ng-click. And let's call the function add_task, something like this. And then, of course, we will need to implement this inside our controller. So inside all tasks controller, we will need to have a function called add_task. And before we will work with our mytasks list, before we'll add something there after list creation, let's actually remove that task from available tasks. So when we will click on this, we will just need to see less tasks in the list. So and for that removal, we will actually use the same service, but now instead of all, it will be remove. Function, and we will need to pass some value here. So here it will be our task that we will need to remove, and we will send it as input parameter. So if you remember, our remove part of service actually accepts the task as input parameter and then removes it from our tasks array. So we will need to pass this as an input parameter here also, just like this. So we are passing our task, and inside our controller we will actually call this service to remove the task from a list. So let's test how it works. Perfect. So it's working, it's removing the task, and of course it's removing the marker, because marker is taken from the same array. So actually it's working just as expected. And right now we can modify the badges. So we should first of all add those badges. And to do that, we will need to open our tabs inside template. And the badge actually works like this. So on a tab, we need to add a badge together with a number. So for example, something like 1 will show us one available task. So instead of this one, we will need to show some kind of number. And we cannot actually count the number of tasks, just like count the length of array, because we don't have that array yet. When we will just open our app, as you remember, we will be on the login page. And after a login page, the first page that we will see will be actually my tasks with my tasks controller. So we won't see anything inside the second controller because it's not called yet, and we won't grab the list of tasks. So we'll need to implement some kind of different calculation. And basically, let's create a value. Let's create a variable, new one, something like count tasks. And we will be looking for that variable. So we will need actually to create and assign some value to this variable inside my tasks controller, because this will be the first one that will be launched, and we will do it within the root scope, because this scope will be available across all the controllers. So actually we will create here this variable. Let's check how it works. Yep, so actually it's working just as expected. So if we are changing the count tasks, it's changing the page number. And then next thing for us will be actually to calculate it dynamically. So for doing that, we will call again our service. So we will add a dependency to it inside mytasks. And in our services, we will need to add one more function that actually will be called something like count. And it should actually return us a number of tasks. So we will return tasks length just like this, and basically it should do a trick for us. Let's check if it's working. So we will call our service. Yep, it's working, so it's counted 3 tasks available. Excellent, but when we're changing the task amount, so when we're adding a task to mytasks, then we will need to calculate it again. So in order for doing that, we will need to override this variable inside all tasks controller. When we click into add task, we will need to after removing to calculate this once again, and for that we will need to add dependency to root scope also. Just like this. Yeah. So actually now it's working as expected. Yep, so we are starting from mytasks, and then we can see this page. So next thing for us will be actually to work with a list of mytasks, and we will try to implement it the same way as a service. So we will add a new service. Let's call it demo mytask service, and instead of this array of existing tasks, we'll have 0, and everything else will be quite the same, except maybe add feature. So we'll need to create a new function called add. We will need to accept our task here as an input parameter. So actually what we will need to do here, we will need to add a task to our array of tasks. And for that we will just use push. So inside our tasks we will push a new task that was received as an input parameter, just like this. So we will also need to implement a page for mytasks. Let's do it with mytasks page. So it will be again in tabs. So for this tab we will implement quite the same logic. So we'll have a page that will be looking for a specific variable. Let's call it count mytasks. This one, and we will need to set it once again inside all task controller. So when we click in add task, we should also specify the new variable count mytasks, and it will use demo mytask service that we also need to add as a dependency. Just like this. And of course, if we are clicking add task, we shouldn't only count, we should actually add this task to list of my tasks. So for that we will just use add functionality, add function with task as an input parameter, just like this. And let's check how it works. Yeah, so actually our badges are working. We're seeing that my tasks amount is changing when we are clicking on add button, so just as needed. And we will also need to calculate amount of my tasks when we're just opening our application after login. So maybe we have some tasks that were already assigned for us or something like that. So we will do that also, and we will need to add a dependency to our service the same way. So demo my tasks service. And just like this. Yep, excellent. And the next thing for us will be actually to display those tasks on my tasks page. So the way how we will do that, we will first of all get them. So we'll assign them to tasks. Let's call it my tasks, not to mess with existing task scope. Another controller. So this one will actually call demo task, my tasks service, to get everything that is inside. And then inside our my tasks template, we will need to implement that logic. And because we are doing quite the same, I think it will be reasonable to copy code from all tasks. So we'll have a list there. Just like this with divider and then the task itself. So I will add it after our text about task not found. So just a list like this, but instead of tasks, we will have my tasks here everywhere. So my tasks account, my task city, my task address, and repeat my task in my tasks. Just like this. Let's see how it's working. So when we are going to available tasks and adding new task to a list, we are seeing that in my tasks. Excellent. So let's add one more. Yep, we are seeing it here. Excellent. So now we need to modify a bit this list because we don't need some things. For example, we don't need the index number. And instead of that, we will need to display the account number here, just as we draw it in our mockups. So instead of putting it nearby to our city name, we will do it as a span. So let's check how it looks. Yeah, it doesn't look really great right now because of stylings, but we will change it later. So next thing is to remove actually an icon. We don't need it here. Yep, so now it looks better. And now we will need actually to disable this text if we have any tasks in my tasks. So we will implement that using simple ng show logic. So let's do it inside big div. And here we will do the following: if count my tasks equal to 0, then actually we will show this, otherwise we won't. Yes, so now it's equal to 0 because we don't have any tasks, and when we are adding a task, we don't see that. Excellent. And now we will need to do the same with our div list. But now the logic will be opposite. So if it's not equal to 0, then it will be displayed, otherwise it won't. Just like this. Yep, excellent. And now we will need to add a link to our details page. So instead of having this hard-coded link, we will need to provide some kind of logic here. And let's do here a pretty simple thing. So instead of ng-ref, we will have a simple ref, and we will just navigate directly to required URL. In our case, it will be tab mytasks. Then we need some kind of ID. Let it be our mytask account number, and basically that's all. So we'll have a link to our details page with this account number. Let's check how it looks. Yep, just as expected. So basically when we are clicking on it, we are going to details. And basically what we completed actually logic between taking a task from available tasks and putting it to my task list. Then we are also changed the navigation between those. So now when we are clicking on a specific task, we are going to task details. The next step for us will be to implement the same, so to work with the same task inside our task details, but we will do it in our next lab. On this step, our lab 218 is finished. Thank you.